We also wanted to give you all an opportunity to actually pick the brains and learn from some people at the collegiate level who are doing this for the first time. Our friends at Ball State Sports Link produced Rocket League matches this year, this academic year. If you don't know what Rocket League is, it's Twisted Metal meets FIFA, cars playing soccer. It's probably the esport that I've played, the quote-unquote esport that I played the most, that it's fun as hell, and it's a lot of fun to watch too. So we brought Brad Dailey and Chris Taylor from Ball State University here to kind of talk you through what their initial experience was like. We'll get to the storytelling and the actual production of a Rocket League match in a little bit, but as a university who was doing this the first time, we wanted to kind of also give you a little bit of the logistics of how did this fit into working with the athletic department, finding the club team on campus, building that relationship, and kind of laying all the ducks in a row that needed to be there in order to then do your production. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it. I guess if you could kick us off, what was the nugget or the spark or the inspiration or the aha moment that you had that said, this year, we're doing this. This is something that we're going to take a shot at?
I think for us, we always start the year with 2 or 3 goals as a staff of things that we want to, by the time we reach the end of our semester, we want to be able to say, all right, we tried 1, 2, 3, or all 3 of these things that we set out at the beginning of the year. So one of those for us this last year was, let's dive into esports, and how could we do that? So Alex Cartman, who is one of our assistants, and Brad, they were really charged from our staff to kind of set this up and to see how we could do it. I think the interesting part here, because I know there are a lot of, at least a few of our college friends who are still here, and I'm very much a college guy, not an esports guy, is how could we make it relative to what we were doing at Ball State University with our student athletes and with our esports team on campus. So we took a small approach this year into how we could do it, but we also know from an academic side and preparing students for careers that obviously, as you've seen all morning long and have heard about all year long, is the growth and the boom in esports and esports production. So we had some students who were interested, who were gamers, and we wanted to provide a new opportunity to teach our students in an area for a potential career. So that's kind of how those things started.
Yeah, it was sort of a longer process too. I wouldn't say it was necessarily like a, maybe not a singular aha moment necessarily. Mm-hmm. I think it was probably like fall of 2017 that we first was sort of like, we know what esports is. It's a thing. It sort of feels imminent. It's kind of cool. Like, we didn't know a whole lot about it. It's something that we should eventually try. And then it was probably spring of 2018 that we were like, hey, to our students, like, we want to do this kind of thing. And immediately there was like just a ton of support from them. And then really, as soon as they knew, they were like pushing us to like do it, really. So spring of 2018 is really when we were sort of trying to figure out what it was that we were going to do, as far as like what sport are we going to play, like what game are we going to play, how are we going to frame it, how can we get people who are our audience to necessarily like care about what we're doing, and then it was fall of last year that we really started like trying to push. And then it was probably a little ambitious. We were trying to get it going in fall, but it didn't quite work. But spring this year, though, we finally got it done. So.
And why did you pick Rocket League? Was it always Rocket League? Did you consider anything else? How did you settle on that game?
Well, yeah, there's, it was G-rated. That was an important aspect for us.
That's a really genuine problem that a lot of people are going to deal with. Pitching CSGO on a college campus where you might... that's tough. That's tough, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a game. It's terrorists versus anti-terrorists.
Yeah.
Okay.
G-rated was one, and then it was described to me, as many of you know, Rocket League maybe, as soccer with cars. So there was at least soccer. We have a soccer team. We can do some different things. And then I learned much more about, obviously, the game as it went along. But we also wanted something that hopefully our athletes because the idea for us is that we took our student athletes, we found student athletes from our sports teams, and we paired them with an esports club team member, and they were a team of 2, and they competed in a tournament. It was a 3-week regular season tournament and then a championship. So that's how we did stories around our student athletes and also the E-Club sports member, vignettes, little storytelling features of who they were. And that was the play with athletics. You know, we're bringing in student athletes, we're telling their stories, we're opening up our content and our, hopefully our audience to the esports realm. And frankly, what we found was that I was shocked by the number of viewers and unique viewers on Twitch and different things, and cross-platform communication and success was very. I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't know what to expect, but now that we have done that and we've seen the success, we had student athletes who are now like stopping us on campus and like, we want to be part of that next year. We want to be part of that next year. And our esports team on campus is growing, and we're going to talk to them about streaming some of their competitions against other colleges, and maybe we can host that in our virtual studio on campus and so on and so forth. But we tried to keep it from a college standpoint relative to who we were and who our space was, and that's why we use student athletes.
Yeah. We did consider some other games too. Probably the number one contender that was going to be a potential alternative was Super Smash Brothers.
Okay.
And hopefully that's something that we can do in the future. Like, I mean, as far as like us on the staff, I actually really enjoy Super Smash Brothers, and Carmen does too. But I think the issue there is like one of the very first ideas that we had as far as like how we're going to do esports was the sort of idea of the, let's have an athlete and pair them with an esports player from the esports club, and that was like our initial approach to it. And then the problem, I think, with Super Smash Brothers is we were worried that for anyone who's played Super Smash Brothers, it's really, really fun and it's really approachable. But also, like, if you play anyone who's like really good at Super Smash Brothers, like you can't even touch them.
Oh yeah,
you know
don't
what
have
I mean?
a chance.
It's infuriating. So we kind of figured between the games, the athletes would probably have the better approach chance really against the esports players, like playing a simpler game like Rocket League, because I mean you're literally just pushing around the ball with these rocket powered cars. I mean obviously there's a lot more skill to it than that, but I mean all things considered, we were trying to avoid any potential of just the esports players just dominating whatever game it was. So we figured Rocket League was a fairly level playing field, I think. And then as far as like when we really started researching it, because it was a game that we as a staff weren't as familiar with too, a lot of things came to light that it was like this game just makes more and more sense. So it was like spring of last year they made like the spectator mode in Rocket League, which is basically like the game cuts for you basically. So like you just log in as another player and you basically just watch the other people play the game. Like the game itself is directing, it's cutting. Like it knows like what camera angle is the most appropriate to have and things like that too. And I mean, large picture, this was really just sort of a fun experiment for us. So like that aspect of it, that it could really take control of very important aspects of it, was a key deciding factor in like why we chose Rocket League.
Yeah, cool. In the first attempt to kind of get us off the ground, we had a lot of built-in things, including replays that we did. We did a 3-camera production of the regular season. We used the spectator mode and a couple other modes of Rocket League as a source and an input, obviously. But we had, much like you saw earlier, but on a much smaller scale, we had cameras on our teams, our competitors. We had 2 announcers, play-by-play in color for the event. And we learned so much, and the experiment for us was, can we do it? Is there something that is value here for our students and for our athletics department? And if we can do it, how can we make it grow? And certainly listening to the morning sessions and other ideas, we can. And for our athletics friends here, one thing to think think about, and our athletics director, Beth Getz, she was very keen on looking at what this project was and how could we potentially, like, you know, prior to a football game or a halftime of a basketball game, can we work it in a way that we bring the entire esports club, you know, in, sit and builds our student section attendance, and then,
Sure.
you know, have them do a championship game up on the video board at a halftime of a football game or whatever. I think that's where we're going to maybe do some other things.
Yeah, that's a future project that was a direct result of what we did, basically. She saw the, you know, immediate reaction to it, the value of it. I mean, it's cool, it's fun, like, whatever. So she immediately, like, wanted us to do more. I guess it's taking a step back, too, just to sort of explain, like, the whole approach that we took to it, too. Going back to, like, spring of last year when we were still in the sort of developmental stage, trying to figure out, you know, what we were going to do, how we were going to approach it. Again, we've already explained that, you know, we wanted a student athlete on a team, we wanted an esports club member on a team. You know, how many teams are we going to have? How are we going to approach that? Like, we were like, should we do a round robin style of tournament? Should we do a bracket style of tournament? You know, how can we integrate, like, little vignettes and feature stories and things like that? Because that was, like, you know, paramount to us, because we wanted to give context as to why viewers should care, right? Because we're, like, again, dealing with sort of a different audience than we have historically dealt with. So obviously, I think it's always important, no matter what sort of story you're telling, to provide the context of why the viewer should care. So we wanted to do the vignettes of the student athletes, the vignettes of the esports players, to, you know, tell people who they are, why they should root for them, things like that. But then it's like, okay, well, we're going to do those things, but, like, where do we put those? Do we just, like, throw those videos out? Like, how do we use them? So ultimately, like, what we decided to do is we had a regular season, a championship sort of thing, and the regular season ended up being a round-robin tournament where we had 4 teams. Every team played every other team, and then ultimately, like, whatever team came away with the best record out of that, it became a seed for the championship, which was then just a normal bracket tournament. But yeah, and then the way that we ended up working in the features and the vignettes too is during the regular season when they were doing the round robin, those were pretty straightforward, cut and dry Twitch broadcasts as far as we would come live. We had a couple student casters who were, you know, casting over the games, things like that. They would, you know, welcome us in, and we pretty quickly get to the games themselves. And those broadcasts went straight to Twitch. They were pretty straight, cut and dry. You know, weren't terribly long. We ultimately would have, like, all 4 teams play every broadcast. So, you know, one team versus one team versus one team. So 2 games ultimately. The broadcasts weren't terribly long. But then after those, like, you know, we'd cut end. We'd do recap videos that were shorter, but pretty much, you know, summarizing what was happening. And that's where we really inserted our features and vignettes, you know. So, like, here's a look back at, you know, the last broadcast from last week, but also, you know, here's so-and-so of team so-and-so. And, like, we found some creative ways, too, to, like, especially as time progressed, to get the teammates, the athletes, and the esports club members to sort of interact a little bit in those features, too. And it became really sort of a fun thing, and it's definitely something that we want to do more going forward, too.
Cool. Yep. Just kind of one last logistical question, because I do want to, you know, get into the content and start looking at some stuff. But did you, I mean, Brad, you mentioned that there was a lot of really positive reception and everything. But trying to implement something quote unquote new on your campus, did you meet any cockeyed eyebrows? I don't want to say resistance, or someone just going, what? You know, did you encounter that anywhere along the way? And if someone in the audience tries to do something similar and meets that resistance, do you have any idea for how to make it palatable for people who maybe don't get it?
I mean, I don't know if we had resistance as much. When we first talked to one of our SIDs, Mike Clark, he didn't resist, but he didn't, like, fully understand, like, what esports was, and we had to sort of explain all that, and then, like, you know, why we wanted to do it and why it was important for us, and, you know, we thought the athletes would like it and things like that. And I mean, not everybody's, like, super into esports and or even aware of what it is and, you know, the impact that it's really had, especially on the younger generation and things like that too. So again, he wasn't resistant, like, he's always awesome. But there was definitely a certain level of, like, explaining what it is and, like, why we want to do it and things like that too. But I think, you know, we pretty much made our pitch to the right people, and they understood. And, you know, at that point in time, we've sort of built up our respect, trust with the athletics department. So they were more or less like, if you guys want to do this, we'll help you do it. And then he ended up being the liaison who ultimately found us our players who were going to be working with us in the Rocket League tournament.
Yeah, I don't think there was, as most of you know, there's a momentum of esports that's happening, even as you know, at the college level. And I know that, our friends at Turner Sports did the Rocket League at the Final Four. And the NCAA is obviously pursuing and looking at and exploring how does esports become or is or will or how into an NCAA sanctioned or branded, if that will ever happen, I don't know. But they're looking at those things. So like our conference is creating teams throughout the conference. One of our best alums, not in SportsLink, from Ball State, is leading a real esports charge within Indiana and building an esports stadium in Indianapolis. So there's a lot of things that people like, all right, we need to do that. And in some ways, when we kind of pitched that idea, we kind of became a campus recognized, oh, you're a leader in esports. And we want to be maybe, but let us just tell some stories and try it first.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Rocket League. For anyone who's in the room who's a traditional stick and ball sport kind of producer, this will feel a lot more familiar. The rhythm, the tempo, the kind of the pace of the, it feels like a sporting event when compared to maybe some of the games that we were talking about earlier. Take us into a little bit of your crew and the storytelling. But you mentioned the spectator mode, but I mean, I guess it could have been pretty easy to just be like, we'll just throw that up. But you're going to do a little bit more than that. Take us in a little bit into what your crew was like, how you had to prep them. You got very talented students on your staff, and I'm sure they're nimble and open to these kinds of things. But how did you actually get this production off the ground? Let's start talking about the storytelling process.
So again, we've got these multiple sort of stages of production where we've got the regular season, we've got the people making the features, and then we've got ultimately like everybody who's involved in the championship tourney too. So for the regular season production, the actual like live broadcasting team was pretty slim really, because we actually used a lot of lock-off cameras and like spectator mode and things like that. We had obviously our 2 student shoutcasters. We had people running our TriCaster, which is ultimately what we use to actually stream to Twitch. But I mean, really, it was like really, really low overhead for those broadcasts. But then like during those broadcasts, we've got students who are shooting B-roll and things like that for the features. Also like during that exact time too, just for convenience sake, that's also when we did the interviews for the features and things like that too. So we had a student crew who were doing those interviews as far as like lighting and doing the actual interviews and things. Probably more people actually doing that, frankly. But yeah, during our regular season, I mean, it was really, really low overhead. We had, again, 3 cameras. We've got a camera on each team of 2, a camera on our talent that's fed into our TriCaster. The TriCaster is basically, like plugged into a computer that's on spectator mode as well. So we use the TriCaster to basically overlay footage of the team. So while we're watching them play, we've at least got these like little windows where we can always see basically their reaction to what's going on and things like that too. That was always really important to us too, is just to basically see the students' faces. We didn't necessarily always want to just go to a full screen of the game playing or whatever, because again, it's always the context of the person and connection and emotion and things like that. So that was incredibly important to us. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to think from a production standpoint, we had a producer, a director, a TD. Director, TD, basically the kind of the same thing on our smaller version with the TriCaster. But producer, director, we had someone who did graphics, just like as expected. The 3-play through TriCaster, our replay was used more so for capturing moments, and we would package those post event. Because the spectator mode had the replays in there, or in our post-game show or whatever that might be, or when we're done, hey, let's go back and here's your highlights from today concept. 2 cam ops in the regular season. We had a features producers team, as Brad was saying, who were 2 or 3 peeps who were shooting B-roll, packaging the features around the athletes, conducting interviews in a room outside of where we were doing the actual event. And then we had a social media team that would, live GIF or live clip and, follow along. And here's the link to watch. And, oh, my goodness, our football kicker just did this. Can you believe this? And, he's a kicker, folks. He should be making goals, having fun on social. So anyway, it was that's kind of the process that we had behind it.
Cool. Yeah. For the championship tourney, though, is much more of a conventional sort of traditional sport setup as far as we ran it from WIPB Studios at Ball State, which is the Indiana Public Broadcasting. We're super lucky to have access to a lot of their facilities, their engineers. They're like, so, they help us with everything. So we ended up having our championship in like a huge green screen studio in there. And then we got to use basically our regular control room that we do all of our other live events from. So it was like super, muscle memory at that point in time. You've got your producer like you normally would. You've got your director, your TD. No real need for an AD necessarily, but graphics and replay and things like that. And then it becomes much more of a conventional sort of broadcast for us. And then we actually use the studio cameras that were already in the studio then too, as far as like coverage of the teams. And in that case, we also invited other people to come to be like just sort of a live audience too, which actually ended up being a really great asset too that we hope to expand upon next year too. But yeah.
Want to take a look at some game footage and some of the stuff that you guys have done?
The first clip that we're going to watch is just a 2-minute bit of our one of our recap videos, so you can see a little bit of the interviews that we did, and ultimately, providing the context of who these players are and things like that. So.
It was a little intimidating at first because I was like, I have no idea what's going on. And I felt bad because I felt like I was just putting him in a position to play defense the whole time, and I was kind of just like chasing around trying to like stay with the play.
It's definitely like your positioning and your mechanics are getting a little bit better. The first, like when you were first out there, you were definitely clueless. Like you had no idea what was going on. You're just like, oh, look, a ball. It's like soccer. I'll hit it.
Yeah.
But now you're starting to like bump people. You're actually positioning. You just got to work on accuracy and hitting the ball.
And then right off the kickoff, and it's Studeville who gets the goal. So a 2-1 lead here for Gator Mellon.
Really, I want to let her do whatever she wants to do, and I'll work off of that to see how I can better improve that. Because if she's playing her best, I can pretty much fit anywhere else. So.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it before each match too to see what we want to do and what we want to try to do. So, I mean, I'm getting in the right position, I feel like, and I'm almost there. It's just I hit my boost and I drive right past it. But it's getting better. We're consistently scoring, actually, so that's been good. We're getting there. So, yeah, we work really well together, I think.
It's fun. It's fun to work and try to show someone the game because I've spent so many hours, like, playing this. The only person I'm worried about is Darius and Remler, just simply because it's a different type of game when you've got your athlete trying to learn how to play the game and one that already knows kind of how to play and plays at a decent level. So it's kind of harder to focus on playing two people at that kind of level.
We're going to win. We're just going to do absolutely everything we can to get there.
Go for it, go for it, go for it, go for it. No! Yes! No!
Who has more points now, Claudia?
It's very cool. I love the idea. It's almost like a pro-am golf tournament we were joking
exactly.
about. And you can almost, for the people who aren't familiar, you're almost learning through your soccer players. It's just kind of a cool way of, kumbaya, bring everyone together kind of thing.
Yeah, and as with anything for folks who are out there, again, in the college space or in athletics departments or in the academic side, most campuses are looking for cross-discipline collaboration or new projects. So this was not just us and our students and what we do and with athletics, but then also with students in the esports club. And anytime you can do those things, it's usually a feel-good thing for administrators or for someone who may, as you said earlier, was there any resistance? You think through those things and say, oh, we're going to, look at this. This is a cross-discipline project that we're doing on our campus with esports club that has 100 members and a growing popularity, and we're taking athletes and we're having our students, and we add in a little PR, some social media around everything, and then it becomes a real project. So if someone is thinking about this at the college level or an athletics level, that might be a great tip to think about in terms of who are reaching other communities on your own campus to ultimately, spread the love of your student athletes and those things.
I think we were also surprised too. They mentioned it a little bit in the video when Gator Melon was talking about how he's worried about Darius and Rimler. Ryan Rimler, who's on the football team, he's like good at Rocket League too, which is something that we didn't necessarily like totally expect or think about going into this. But it's like, oh yeah, a lot of these athletes probably do play these games, duh. And then as soon as we started doing the project too, like a ton of athletes have reached out to us and it was like, when you guys do this again, like we want to be involved in things like that. So it's going to be so easy to do this again moving forward. And I think it's going to be a lot more of a level playing field too, because, I'm sure some of the athletes are absolutely great at these games. So, yeah.
Sure. Yep. Any questions from the audience so far on what's been going on? Yeah. Yeah, we can.
Did you guys contact, was any contact with Rocket League to get rights to broadcast, or did you have to? And then kind of second question about advertising.
Question, if you weren't able to hear it, did you communicate with Rocket League at all to get rights to broadcast, and was there any advertising that you put alongside this?
Yeah, we didn't do any advertising. So in that phase, we weren't making a profit or making money off of this project. So it wasn't a concern, I think, to any folks at Rocket League. It was broadcast within the community that on Twitch and that does those things. So I'm going to look really goofy here and say that no, we never really talked to Rocket League. But our esports club who use it, and they're using it in the events that they go to, like, we kind of leaned on them in that aspect. And again, we didn't try to do any. It wasn't a profit thing. It was we were promoting athletes and members and telling their stories, and they happened to be playing Rocket League. Is kind of the view that we took on that.
I mean, we certainly did a bit of research to make sure that we weren't
Correct.
violating any sort of rights or anything like that. But I think since there's no monetary gain, I mean, anytime there's no monetary gain, you pretty much are worry-free for the most part.
Cool. We definitely got some time for more questions, but you had one more clip that you brought. Want to walk us through some of that too?
The next clip is pretty much, it's the end of our championship broadcast, so it's actually the very tail end of gameplay of the championship game, and then we go into post-game interview and things like that. So.
Now we'll see both esports players here at the 1 minute mark able to score.
Now can Zarcia pull his team back?
Can Zarcia pull things back in game 5? Zarcia with the demolition. Rimler with the ball now. Now Zarcia juggling. He's finding a way, but Rimler with the defense and Darius with the save. 30 seconds away for Rimler and Darius. Can Zarcia and Como find a way to get back into this game? So it's in the middle. Can someone get there? Claudia Como goes for it, just misses, and it's going to go coast to coast. 3-0. They put the game on ice. Darius with the goal.
Setting
18 seconds remaining.
the goal away.
So 3-0 in game 5 for Darius and Rimler. They come back. They were down a goal in game 4 with 7 seconds remaining, and now here they are, 3-0 up in game 5.
Just settling
Mere
it out.
seconds away.
And Darius
4-0, another one for Darius.
Closing the game out. This would be crazy to come back in 11 seconds. Absolutely no way.
So 4-0 here with 11 seconds remaining. Claudia Como with a block shot there as we're under 10 seconds. Zarcia with the shot. Zarcia with the goal with 2 seconds remaining. 4-1, the consolation.
At least it's not a clean sheet. And Darius and Rimler taking this one home comfortably after a crazy game 4.
So 2 seconds left. They get the touch. Zarcia with another shot, and it won't count, and that will do it. Darius and Rimler are your champions. Phenomenal series. I mean, that was about as entertaining as a series we've seen all season.
And especially with what happened in game 4.
So we have to take a look at the highlights here from the decisive Game 5, or the whole series, is now Zarcia gets the goal laid on, and they had a good look at the title in Game 4.
And Como and Zarcia started off very strong.
Phenomenal save there from Zarcia as he takes it end to end and blocks Darius just.
And that's where I thought the series was going in Zarcia and Como's favor, honestly.
You see Gatormelon cheering on Darius.
Giving a little
Rimler there. Zarcia had the save, but just not enough, and Rimler able to convert. See Zarcia setting it up, and Rimler with the own goal. I mean, they saw it when it happened, that it counted. Now Zarcia, I mean, some of the saves defensively that Zarcia made throughout this entire run in the playoffs, I mean, just sensational work from Zarcia. As we saw the goal there with 7 seconds left, and then Darius from the kickoff, able to tee it up just over Zarcia.
Caught Zarcia off.
So you see the crowd reaction there. Fans were loving it as they were watching it. And then we see Rimler put the game on ice there at the end. And they are your champions this season.
And just sealing out Game 5.
And we're going to send it down now to Preston Husband as he has our champions, Darius and Rimler.
All right, first of all, congrats, guys, on being crowned the champions here tonight. Rimler, you did it all here this evening. You had that huge goal, the big comeback. It looked like you guys were down and out. How about that last goal that pushed you guys into the 5th game and allowed you to come away with the victory?
Oh, man. I mean, I don't know what to say. I was playing like, I don't even know. I don't want to say it. I was playing terrible. And I guess just last game, it just kind of clicked a little bit with Darius and I, who was doing all the work. And I was getting into the swing of things, and I guess I hit a lucky shot, kind of. So.
Where does that rank for your athletic achievements in your career?
Oh man, it's all the way at the top, you know. I peaked. I'm at my peak right now. Yeah.
Good to hear. And then for you, coming away with the championship, obviously this is your home sport. You're used to it. How does this feel for you?
Always good to take home a win. It's always fun to play against these guys. You know, it's not the first time we played in this kind of environment. It was just good for the team. So.
Did you ever feel like you guys were out of it? Was that last goal surprising when you guys were able to send it to the 5th game?
Yeah, we were definitely having a few issues, in the first couple of games. But when we scored that equalizer to take us to Game 5, that was definitely a surprise. But winners came out on top.
All right, so let's take a look at that final bracket. It's Rimler and Darius taking the championship here tonight as you get one final look. Congrats to you guys. We'll send it back to Corey.
Very cool. All right, we probably got like 5 minutes where we can squeeze in a couple more questions for these guys. Yes, we have one right here in the middle. Mike's coming your way.
Production level is a little different than the first couple panels.
It still looked pretty fun to me.
We're going to have confetti next year, though, I can tell you that.
You better have a confetti cannon. I mean, are you even esportsing if you don't have a confetti cannon?
I mean, it seemed like it was a big deal in the production.
Sorry, go ahead.
This may be a naive question. This is literally like the first time I've ever heard anything about esports.
That's what we're here for.
But what is a season? Like, what does it look like? How long is it? And what do practices look like also?
I guess you can kind of make your own rules, right?
Yeah, I think, again, we're not experts in the esports and the seasons and the thing. We leaned on our esports club to kind of do that. But what we did was a 3-week regular season. So they would come in once a week for 3 weeks, compete against each other, bracket results out of that, and then we went into a championship. So I do know that our esports teams and our athletes met up, in the off time, and they practiced and they worked on some things. You could do it however you want to, right? We chose, at least, since it was our first voyage, and we were trying something that let's try to keep it very manageable for us. And we're like, hey, we can do 3 weeks, 1 night a week, and then we'll bring everyone back into a 1-night bigger championship. That's how we chose to do it, just to keep it manageable. Because at the same time for us, we had NCAA work coming up with March Madness, and we're doing men's volleyball and ESPN3 broadcast or ESPN Plus broadcast. So we had to fit it in a window that made sense for us too.
Of the year that you do it, or does it really matter?
This was the very first time that we've ever tried it. I mean, we did it just this spring. Basically, like, because of, again, our other schedule and everything, we ended up doing our regular season in like February because, you know, it gave us a little bit of time to plan at the very start of the semester because, again, these are students doing everything. So they had a bit of time to, you know, prepare for what we were doing in January. The regular season was in February. We really took March off because of everything that we do with NCAA and March Madness and things like that. And then we came back and did our championship tourney in April. But I mean, as for us and doing it sort of the way that we're doing it, again, sort of unconventionally and things like that, it's pretty much just whenever we can make it work. Like how a regular season looks like with Rocket League, I frankly don't even know. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Anybody else have any? Oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
I just have another question on this because I'm new to this. I was just wondering, do you have any plans in the future to do any kind of like local advertising inserts into these, into these games, or do you have any plans for, well, what is your game plan for generating advertising revenue?
Yeah, I think again we're an academic program, so we're trying to provide opportunities and mentor students and teach skills and give them an experience, an educational experience. But I can tell you that at many levels, this is a very lucrative area in esports. We're not in it to make money. We're not going to attempt to do that. I think what we may be able to do is to partner with athletics or the esports club, maybe, you know, a corporate sponsor that is already in our athletics department. It could almost be a value add, if you will, to something that's already out there. Or, you know, in our studio set, we had an awesome desk and setup that had this prime spot for like a sticker or a logo or something like that. How that would work, and then with rights and you know, with Rocket League or whatever game we would do. But I think inserts or commercials for us, at least after year one and going into year two, would be more vignettes, probably starting to do things that SportsLink produces normally. You know, like in between games, here's a story on our men's basketball team who plays Toledo on Friday night, you know, and blah, 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 blah. Like, I think that's how we would incorporate that. In terms of commercials or slides, it would be like a self-promotion or a Ball State promotion or esports promotion. But yeah, I mean, definitely we're thinking, you know, there was valuable real estate right on the front of that desk that we could, you know, go get a sticker or you know, cover cost, or maybe buy some gaming consoles. Who knows? But I don't think from our standpoint we're like looking to make money at this point, because that's philosophically that's not what we're doing. We're teaching kids to produce and tell stories.
Katie.
What consoles did you use, and how did you get access, or did you guys buy them? And then when you were producing your graphics package, what were kind of the thoughts behind what you guys eventually made?
We used all PCs for this, but then you may have noticed in that one feature they were using Xbox controllers. But yeah, there was the discussion of, you know, with Rocket League, yeah, you can cross-platform and things like that, but we ended up just going with all PCs because basically in our smaller lab, which is where we did our regular season, we've got a couple gaming PCs that we were lucky to basically just sort of come across, and they were Alienware, so I mean, they were perfectly like capable of doing it. And then the esports players, they would actually bring their own PCs too, which ended up being these like, you know, monstrous Frankenstein things or whatever. During our championship, we actually the game went down because we overloaded a circuit, and one of the esports players' computers sucked all the juice out of it. So yeah.
Yeah, the esports guys, I mean, it wasn't some of you may know this, and like, you know, it's kind of like have game will travel, like they're coming in with towers under their arms and setting up. So We were just trying to have the PCs or the platforms for our student athletes, and the esports guys kind of brought the other stuff. And as you heard in earlier panels, networked them together and so and so.
I know that sounds annoying, but it seems like it's super normal for them.
Yeah.
Like they didn't care at all. It's just carrying their computer.
Yeah, I see them going through like airplane security. I'm like, you have to bring your whole console with you? All right, okay. All right, we're up against the clock here, so let's do rapid fire. Let's get a couple of in.
How is this implemented, or how do you plan to implement it into your curriculum? Also, do you plan on growing the live event to more of a stadium type event with more of a crowd? And at what point do you think you're ready to do that?
Yeah, good question. I think much like everything, there's a proof of concept feel, right? You have to do something, you have to do it successful. We have to feel good about it. Everyone involved with it has to feel good about it. And then you then look at some external validation to see where it can grow. And we had all of that. Like, we all felt good about what we did. We had the external validation from outside of just our sphere of folks. So we want to grow. I think it's important, again, from an academic standpoint, like my job is to provide the best opportunities for our students in digital sports production. This is an area that there are jobs coming available in, right? You look at the amount of productions across the country and the, as you saw earlier today, the level of those productions that, you know, if we can train a few kids to you know, now move into that marketplace, and it's not, hey, we're not ESPN now. We can also send kids to E-League and esports. I think that's an important thing. So we definitely want to grow that. I think next year it'll be similar to what we did, but probably centered around a much bigger, maybe a one-day thing where we can really put in the production value and bring in the confetti and all these different things that that we could maybe do. But yeah, we want to grow it for sure. And I think the third part of that is, can we take our esports team when they bring other universities to campus, when they compete on a weekend, can we start to produce those things for them? So there's a few things, you know, down the line, I think.
Cool, last one.
Hi, I'm the vice president of the University of North Florida's Esports Club, and we kind of have frustrations regarding our athletics department and like being recognized. And I know, like, as an RSO, like a registered student organization, our funding is different, and so like it would be great if we could be recognized on that higher level to get that higher level of funding. So I guess my main question is, what do you think it takes for an esports club that could have like 200 or so members like we do, but doesn't really get like anything for that, just like except we have them?
Yeah, I think our club on campus feels much like what you feel, I think. I will say at the very beginning of that question, when you said, hi, I'm the vice president of, I was waiting for you to say Rocket League and then like go out about whatever we just did.
You're not doing next year.
By the way, you owe us money.
For a minute, took a deep breath. But our club feels that way too. And again, like, I can only relate it to what I know from what we do in a college athletics production space. But we're treating it much like the answer I gave previously, like external validation and proof of concept. I think what we do, we're looking for that from proof of concept and external validation, but we're bringing exposure to our esports club that now they can go and champion to get more funding or to be recognized in different levels. And there's this video content now that they can show, and there's stories being told about the esports guys and gals as gamers or a student at Ball State, and then there's some value in that. So you have to find a champion somewhere. We're fortunate enough, I think, that certainly our AD, our president, champion new ideas and new things. And again, we have a very notable alum from Ball State University who is leading a really large esports charge in Indiana. So sometimes we felt it was kind of a perfect storm to get involved. But you have to find a champion, find someone that believes in what you're doing and kind of carry that flag a little bit. And then if you have content, whether ours was good or great or whatever, I mean, we can all do better on content, but those esports peeps now have video content and they can go say, look at what we're doing and look at this and look how it can be produced and different things. That's my answer.
Yeah, I think the best part of what we did necessarily was just the cross-section aspect of it, crossing athletics and the esports. Because again, yeah, our esports club were super on board immediately as we pitched the idea to them because, nobody even knows that they exist. And, Ball State Sports Link, we have a bit of a channel and, an audience and things like that. And again, that audience is different, right? So being able to not only give them exposure, but to give them exposure to, a new audience, because I think we all experience sort of the echo chamber of, whatever sphere we live in and things like that. And if you really want to, get yourself or your work noticed or whatever, sometimes you have to get outside that sphere. So I think that's something that sort of helped with our project.
Our esports peeps they were like stoked that there were real, I shouldn't say real, that is not what let's backtrack that. Our esports peeps were very excited that there were student athletes playing other sports, and that brought the attention because I think as you and others, we learned, that they kind of want to be treated like an athlete too, like it's a game and they're doing these things. So, our folks who partnered with our football team, that was a really cool exposure for them because you have our football guys playing with the esports club and blah, 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 blah. So that brought some attention, I think, that they needed and hopefully will help them as they start to go too.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Real quickly before we let you guys go, we want to let you know about a couple other events that we have coming up that are very esports specific. There it is. We haven't officially announced this yet, so this is inside information for you guys. Esports Stadium in Arlington, one of the coolest, newest, biggest facilities. If you're in the Texas area or you can get down there over the summer, or actually that's post-summer, it's September, we got a cool event that we're going to be hosting there. And then annually in November, we haven't announced the date yet, we host our SVG Esports Production Forum in Los Angeles, and that's very similar to kind of what you saw earlier today, a lot of in-depth presentations and panel discussions from people who work in esports. So if this segment of the industry interests you more and you can make it to these events, obviously just register, apply to register to the event. It costs nothing to come, to attend the event. If you can get there, we would love to have you. And of course, the rest of the SVG schedule, you can certainly find out more on our website at sportsvideo.org/events. Again, apply and come. They're open doors to everybody. Come and learn. We're going to be all over the place this summer. Denver, Detroit, New York, Miami. It's going to be fun. So join us along the way. Thank you so much for being here. Give these guys a round of applause.